Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's the middle of winter and that means the studio is getting cleaned up. Not sure if I'm going to do a redesign to it or not, but that may happen. And outdoor activities getting a little bit slowed down this time of year. We've gone from 80 degrees to 20 degrees in about 2.5 weeks, and we also had our snow. So camping is out for the rest of the year. Hunting season is now over. No more hunting videos. We do got a video to catch up the remaining part of November and December, but I figured I would go ahead and share with you some photos that I took from the trip to New Hampshire and Maine that I took with my high school friend. And these were shot on the 35mm camera, which is right here. This is my Canon FTb-QL, and the lens that I mostly used was the 35-105 for that trip to New Hampshire, Maine. One thing I might do going forward though is I might remove this rubber kind of lens hood on it. As you can see, when I bought this lens, the hood actually came on. It's just attached to a kind of a UV filter, but what's ended up happening is, if you notice, the lens hood being rubber has gotten a little bit deformed. So when I'm adjusting for the focal length, whether I'm going from 35 to 105 and then I'm adjusting the focus, because it's deformed, it created a little bit of a vignette in the photos. So going forward, I'm probably not going to use this lens hood. I don't use lens hoods much anyway, only if there's like some really bright or the way the sun is actually angled. So the photos I'm going to show you today were actually shot on the Kodak Ultramax 400. It was one that was suggested to me for fall foliage. One thing I noticed when shooting is, because it was very bright, some of these came up a little bit overexposed. I probably should underexpose a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into showing these 35mm photos from New Hampshire and Maine. So when I picked these up, I already took a look at them and I was like really surprised how they came out. Like I said, a few of them came out a little bit overexposed, but I kind of like the coloring rendition. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with these. So this first photo is overlooking the Alton Bay area of Lake Winnipesaukee with the mountains in the background and some fall foliage. This was actually taken at the end of a dirt road, almost on private property. Now what happened here was we took a turn down a road. My GPS got a little bit confused and it actually brought us out to this scene. So I was like really happy that we kind of took a detour of a wrong turn. This is beautiful. This is the same property area that these people have owned. Looks like I might have got a duplicate in there. A little more of a close-up. This was an old shed and barn on their property. This here was when we got down into the Alton Bay area. Took a side road to actually go find a restaurant to go eat, and this led us right along the water of the Alton Bay, Lake Winnipesaukee, with the mountain range in the background. It was just such a beautiful, beautiful area. And I clipped a little bit of the pine tree, but really couldn't do anything about that. Shot of somebody on their motorized canoe out on the lake with the fall foliage in the background. This was on a highway somewhere in New Hampshire. I forget exactly what town it was, but we were pulled over at a scenic overlook. and I was shooting some of the scenery, and when I turned, I saw the light was just illuminating this whole mountain in the background here with all the fall foliage. I kind of wish that I had exposed this a little more so that this area here was a little bit darker, but then again I would have lost these dark areas here. But the way this was just illuminated was just absolutely incredible. This is the same overlook area looking to the mountain that was behind us, that area we just came from. I like how it shows the car coming up. Got a little bit of a sun flare over here. This picture is at Loon Mountain just before you get to the Kangamangas Highway. This is actually on their property. This is the river. I think it's the Seconic River if I'm not mistaken. But it was just so beautiful with the fall foliage in the mountain coming down. If you notice, the river is a little bit low. We had been in a drought, even up in New Hampshire, of not getting any rain for about 2 months at that point. And you can see up in this corner right here what I was talking about with the vignetting from the lens hood starting to warp. And this is a shot of their driveway coming into Loon Mountain with all the different flags. This is on the river up in Maine with the covered bridge, which I'm going to show in a minute. This part right here is actually the side of the covered bridge. There was no way for me to actually get this shot without shooting it from the bridge and getting that in the picture. And then this is the covered bridge. It's the Parsonfield Porter covered bridge. It's actually in Porter, Maine. It's one of the few covered bridges in there, and my friend John is standing down the end there with his arms up. Let's see if I can zoom in just a little bit more here. This is the railroad car at Loon Mountain in New Hampshire. I have another New Hampshire video out from when I was very, very young, and my wife and I were either still dating or first married. We took that trip, and that train is actually still there. And the foliage is just absolutely beautiful. We hit it right at peak foliage time, New Hampshire. Maine was a little bit past peak, even though we were at the same elevation and height. Here I was trying to do a macro shot with the 35-105 lens on the Canon, and I kind of like how this picture came out, the way the bokeh is in the background and highlighting the leaf. Unfortunately, that lens really does not do true macro because of how far you have to be back from the subject, but I still love how that came out, and the color and the foliage we had was mostly gold here in Rhode Island. This was an old schoolhouse, may have doubled as a church, but it was labeled as a schoolhouse from back in the 1700s. We happened to find this up in Maine, just outside of the Cornish port area. We were driving down some roads. My friend wanted to show me some of the scenic areas in Cornish where he had lived a good portion of his life, and we just happened to find this old schoolhouse. I liked how it looked. I love old buildings. I love the landscape in the background. This is just another shot of the mountains up in Maine. If you notice right there, that is actually Mount Washington in New Hampshire, and they had started getting snow already. So we had drove up one of the mountains, and it was a pretty easy drive for my car, considering it's only a 4-cylinder. But yeah, scenery up there was just very beautiful, and we come across this old barn that was converted into a house with the scenic mountains in the background, and I just love that because that just shows the rural New England living. Another shot of the field that was around that house. This is Halloween here in Rhode Island. I was just finishing up the film. I had like 5 or 6 more frames, and one of my neighbors did a real elaborate decorations. I'm not really a celebrator of Halloween, but they did these elaborate decorations, so I decided to just go ahead and take a picture of it. This is the pond here in Rhode Island in my town. Like I said, if you notice, a lot of the fall foliage this year in Rhode Island was a golden color, as opposed to having a lot of yellows and reds. This is another view of the same pond, just along the back side of that pond. This is the same pond, standing off to the side. This is a waterfall, which will be in one of the other pictures, but I just love how the reflection is in the water of that big tree. And that's a duplicate. This is a close-up of the waterfall with the geese. This is the actual waterfall in town. Now, the waterfall is not really flowing that much because at this point we're getting into almost 3 months of no rain, but it still looked very scenic with the colors, and I'm really glad for this Ultramax film about how it actually just brought out the colors. I think this is probably going to be one of my more favorite 35mm films to shoot with, because the Fuji 400 that I used to test cameras has really a greenish tint to it. So it's good for testing cameras, but as far as capturing true color, the Kodak Ultramax is really great. And again, you can see that vignetting from that lens hood, which I'll be getting rid of. This is along the river on the back side of the mill, just below the waterfall. Same property as the waterfall, as again you can see the vignetting. And I was kind of just finishing out the roll of film at this point, and I kind of liked how the gold color and the leaves were on the ground. Again, just finishing out some film with some ducks on a different lake in town. It was getting near sunset, and this is why everything is kind of like a little bit dark. More ducks. Now I had one last frame to shoot in this camera. This up here, I'm not sure exactly what that is. I think maybe the lens had gotten a little dirty because I've been out all day, but there's 3 ducks flying by, and I just brought up the camera at the last minute. I was already exposed to infinity, so the focusing was not a problem, but I just kind of like how this action shot came out. Now, I had just brought up the camera. I saw these ducks starting to come up, and I just kind of went up really quick and took the picture. So it was basically one of these moves, and I like how it actually came out for an action shot. I like how because they were going by so fast, some of the wings are missing, and it's really hard to do with a 35mm. I had the guy at the store tell me that he would never be able to actually get an action shot like that with 35mm. So, but yeah, those are the pictures from New Hampshire and Maine on 35mm. So figured I'd share one last fall foliage video with you now that we're into the winter months. So I've got some other cameras that I need to test. So I've got a Mamiya camera that I got to test, that's medium format. Then I've got some other 35mm. So we'll see you in the next video.